Welcome into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway here on a Friday with you. And we need to do some updating on more commitments for K-State. We've had a lot to talk about over the last week. Two more that have come in the recent days that need their shine. And one of them is a K-State legacy, and the other is the first wide receiver in the class of 2026. So we'll get into talking about that here today. But first, reminder for everybody, you can go to cats2ireland.com, get your travel, ticket, game, all that info for your experience over in Ireland this coming year. We're really close to the 2 month out point. So what that'll be Monday. Monday's show will be 2 months exactly from Ireland. No specific way that we're going to commemorate it. I'll just be like, oh, 2 months. How about that? Nothing special to go with that, unless I get real creative in the time frame from now to then. That probably will not happen. But go to cats2ireland.com. Travel info, you need to figure out how to get over there, maybe how you're going to get around once you're there. Hospitality, you want a nice hotel, you want, exclusive welcome parties, all these different things. And then obviously you want to have the best seats over in Ireland for when the game kicks off on August 23rd, 2025. So go to cats2ireland.com to get all of that info there. Let's start with Lawson McGra, Drew, the son of John McGra and a product of Blue Valley West. He had been listed initially at, I think, linebacker on his profile, but it seems like there are a lot of things that could be in play for him at K-State. So what is it about Lawson McGra that led to K-State pulling the trigger and giving the offer? And then shortly thereafter, after McGra decides that he's going to commit and go play at K-State just like his dad did.
Yeah, so to start, I think what draws K-State to Lawson McGraw is he is supremely athletic. Like to the point where like I don't know what position he's gonna play. And I don't think that K-State really knows yet either. It's gonna kind of be we're gonna wait and see what his body does, because he is already 6'4", 220. So like the positions that I really have like locked in on and like zoned in would be something like defensive end, linebacker, or tight end. And he has played all three of those positions this summer at various camps and trying to figure out what position he is going to end up playing. Uh, Lawson McGraw wanted to be a Wildcat very, very badly. He made that pretty well known throughout his recruitment process. So, like, if he got the K-State offer, it was going to be shut down right away. I mean, that's why if you really go back in the time machine, like 2 or 3 months ago, like I put out something on one of our videos saying that like Lawson McGraw will be in the K-State recruiting class in some fashion. He wanted to be a Wildcat so bad that he not only went to the offense and defensive line camp at K-State the first of this month. He doesn't really play defensive end in high school, but he knew that if he wanted to get an offer, we'll try defensive end. He wanted to be a Wildcat so bad that after he didn't get the offer from the O-line D-line camp, he came back a couple weeks later, played a little bit of linebacker, played a little bit of tight end. They already had some of him playing defensive end and wanting to be a Wildcat that badly, and also being the athlete that he is, led him to K-State offering. And then after that, it was over. Like he had some group of five offers, but like it was over when K-State got involved.
So how long do you think it takes to figure out the plan for K-State and Lawson McGraw on where he'll be positionally? Is that something that may not be determined until after, really probably a year in the program, like that redshirt year where they, they'll give him a spot, I'm sure. But we've obviously seen guys in the past that they flip positions or sides of the ball, a year, multiple years into it. So how long do you think that progression takes for a player like Lawson McGraw?
Probably 6 months to a year. Like I imagine like he'll get settled in and start working with a position group as soon as he gets to Manhattan, obviously, and goes through strength and conditioning. And after that, you just kind of see where he goes, because he's already a big kid, and he's like what I joke about saying like the skinny 220. Like he looks like he's somebody that could put on 30 or 40 pounds, either be a tight end or be a defensive end. Or he could just stay and hover in that 220, 225 range and just be a quick linebacker. Like there are so many things that you can really do with Lawson McGra. Also, one of the most fun highlight tapes of this recruiting class, just from like the unique perspective of it, the very first play of his junior highlight tape is him blocking a punt, picking it up, and running 40 yards for a touchdown. Like there aren't many that will go and do that. And again, in a world where you're going to have 105 scholarship players or 105 total players, you can have however many you want on scholarship. The the key is going to be finding like that niche of players that will be willing to do anything for K-State and to even like play a lot of special teams. Like Lawson McGra would fill that bill right away, as well as playing whatever position he will play.
Well,
I imagine it will be a special teams staple.
it seems like in this era of college football that you're about to go into with, once the roster spots firmly get to 105, you're kind of going to need to build this after your, however many you initially would, maybe like, your normal scholarship number now is what you would, okay, we're going to pencil you all into these positions. But then after that, you're probably going to want a lot of like essentially utility players
Yeah.
where, you bring in these guys that are athletes that, okay, yeah, you could play receiver or DB for us. You could play, and like Lawson McGraw's case, you're talking about, it could be linebacker, it could be defensive end, it could be tight end, it could be all these things. I think you may have more of those guys that end up in classes or, players down. And that may lead to, maybe a couple extra guys in a recruiting class every year that you wouldn't
Yes.
normally have added as like a scholarship guy. But if you have the flexibility to do it now and you want to be able to get one of those like flex players, that might be something that becomes more common. And so it's valuable then to get a player like Lawson McGra that I think it seems like it was trending that eventually his merit as a player would have gotten him there anyways, not just he
Yes.
really wants to play for K-State and he can do all these different things. I think whatever spot he settled into, that the K-State offer would have eventually come. But to have a guy that obviously wants it that bad and then has the positional flexibility, that's going to be pretty valuable moving forward in college football. Even if, it's guys that aren't going to start every game for you every year and they're only going to, they're not ever going to play a lion's share of the snaps. You still need to have guys that can kind of move around and you can kind of pencil and play when you get the opportunity.
It's not quite the same extent because we don't even know which side of the ball Lawson McGra will play at yet. But like it's very similar to what K-State is saying with Garrett Dixon of like we're gonna play you at either corner or safety, and like it's just gonna depend on where the numbers are that we really need. And I think what is key with McGraw and Dixon is that they both camped and played all the positions that are possible that they could play. So like they know about this like really going into it of like, okay, I am probably one of these positions for McGraw. I'm either a corner or a safety for Garrett Dixon, and it all just kind of depends on what all happens with how rooms shake up and all of that. So I think that there is a lot of value in being able to play multiple positions. It's just after you make that initial move, you probably want to stick with where you are. No, you're on mute.
Sorry, we got the coworker in here today, not being very mindful of her office partner. It's one of those things too with Lawson McGraw where at the end of the day, fans still like to see that there are certain players from the past that still have that connection and have gotten that love and admiration for their school passed on to, a guy like John McGraw who started at K-State, played in the NFL, and his son has, the same love and passion and wanted it that bad. And he wants to, go and be one of those legacy type players. You talk
All right.
about like Ashton Moore last year,
Yes.
he wanted, his brother Austin was there and he wanted to come and like that's important for fans to see, and they like knowing that there are still players out there that they have that commitment to K-State, and it has worn off on family members that also want to be a part of it as bad as they did.
Oh, 100%. Like that is a big deal. I have a question for you. Yeah, usually you're the one that's asking me the
That
questions.
is true.
We're flipping it today. I was on K-Man on Wednesday, talking about all the commits with Mitch Fortner, and I brought up talking about John McGraw. Where do you remember John McGraw the most? Because I remember him by far the most as a Chief.
Uh, I would say, I mean, I don't know that I have any recollection of his NFL career.
Like, this is where it helps being the Chiefs fan growing up. Like, I vividly remember John McGraw playing for the Chiefs. Like
I mean,
we weren't old enough to remember him playing at K-State, but I
that would have
definitely
been the only team that I would have been able to tell you that I knew that he played for. So because like that was still like that. I was obviously plenty of Chiefs time. I mean, he got there like that was peak Sunday noon. The
yeah.
Chiefs were on CBS, and then I was going to watch the Cowboys at 3:30 on Fox, and it was like, Trent Green and then Tyler Thigpen. So yeah, no, I would say the Chiefs would have been the only one that I would have been able to honestly tell you I knew that he played for, but I really no recollection of it
I didn't
whatsoever because I wasn't emotionally invested in the Chiefs.
I didn't realize until doing like just more research on John and his NFL career, had no idea he was drafted by the Jets.
In the second round, how about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that's pretty wild.
Another Riley County Falcon going early. Oh, hey, how about this? John McGraw, birthday, April 2nd. Shout out, John.
Shout out.
All right, let's move on to the next commitment to discuss, and that is Maxwell Lovett, a wide receiver, not from Texas. That is messed up on there. He is from Colorado, and you've been all over this, Drew, that he is coming from a school that is producing a lot of players and is a current teammate of another commitment in the class for K-State.
Yeah, Cherry Creek High School, loaded. We've talked about this multiple times now. Oliver Miller is a current K-State commit as well. That goes to Cherry Creek. What is fascinating is Cherry Creek is a factory in the state of Colorado and has produced a lot of really great athletes. Max Lovett absolutely shattered their 100-meter record for their school record on the track this spring. He ran a 10.54 100-meter dash, and he plays with a lot of speed. He has good hands. A guy that I heard about a couple months before he got offered as like, okay, like we want to see this guy camp, and he really lit it up at their camp that he was at. And again, we've said it a lot with this class. A lot of this class is built on like speed and athleticism. And if you're gonna miss, it's all about missing, but you still have that elite trait of speed, and like that's why you wanted to take somebody. And Max Lovett has elite speed.
Yeah, I think we're seeing right now K-State is obviously putting some emphasis on that. We saw like in the transfer cycle, Caleb Medford, his game is all about speed, and I think they want to be able to probably have a few more of those guys just naturally on the roster that they can develop because they're showing now at this point that this staff is able to, I think, develop receivers actually better than what some would think. I get that there is still people would look at it and go, well, they're not producing at necessarily the level that you would want. We're seeing that change, though. Like Avery Johnson just threw for a lot of yards as a sophomore quarterback. And we're talking about Jace Brown being maybe the first 1,000-yard receiver in over a decade at K-State. So I think we're seeing that. And then I would even go and just say, like, Malik Knowles got to a point where he was a very good receiver at the end of his career. Cade Warner went from a guy that, another Nebraska reject that all those idiots were like, oh, he's terrible. He can't do this. He can't do that. Cade Warner was fantastic that final year at K-State. And I think they had a large role in that. And then, like we're talking Jace Brown, you see that he's going to be in the fray here. I think they want and need more guys that they can develop naturally, and you need to have them all be different types of players. And so if you can get a burner and then maybe think that you can kind of coach him up and develop him in some of the other areas, that's probably a good step for K-State to start to go down, because that is the one area the receiver recruiting does have to get better. Because when we talk about Jace Brown, like, massive win for this staff in that situation, but every other receiver that we're talking about this year, for the most part, is probably going to be a transfer that is helping them win, unless one of the younger guys really bursts through, and like Larry Porter is going to be, it was a fantastic get last year in the recruiting class for them, but there needs to be a little bit more of the receiver development that happens, or obtaining guys that you can develop, because the ones that they have and have had the opportunity with, I think, have turned out pretty well.
No, absolutely. The receiver recruiting needs to take a little bit of a step, but Max Levitt, I think, is a good first addition in this class. I mean, there are people that have watched Max Levitt that really compare him to what Jace Brown was coming out of high school, and I mean, that ended up being a very, very good addition, which is very funny because, again, it just seems like the lower ranked prospects in the recruiting classes at K-State of recent are the ones that end up being the stars, and Jace Brown is another one. But you have Maxwell Levitt's ranking up there. Just got ranked by On3 like literally today, 88. So on the higher end of the 3-star. The only other rating and why it has tanked a little bit, or why his ranking isn't like super high right now, is 247 has him as an 85. The other two sites do not have him ranked. So that when you don't have a ranking on two sites, when you do an industry ranking, or sometimes you don't have three, or sometimes it depends on like which ones you don't have for why your ranking looks like it does, with how On3 is doing their how they do their ranking list and how their formula works. Kind of depends on what your ranking really looks like. Having an 88 from On3 will be good. I imagine that eventually, when 247 comes back around and ranks him, he'll be ranked a little bit higher. And then it's just about to depend on what ESPN does, because it's about to be a split pie 3 ways with these rankings. Also, just wanted to point this out there, because now I'm looking at the commit list and like, somebody else got ranked, because I saw that the class went up a little bit. HD Davis comes in as an 87.
Yes, I actually I noticed that yesterday. So they're starting to come through. We'll see that bump up, and
The class will be ranked a lot higher in like probably 2 or 3 weeks than it is right now, because there's only 2 players that have a full list of rankings.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's even guys like DJ Ackerson, who, pretty good ratings from the 3 that have it. He doesn't have an ESPN rating in there right now, but like very high 3-star on On3. Maybe actually some work was put in by Rivals on his ranking there. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind. But those are the 2 recent commits for the Cats. We did learn yesterday that Savorian Martin is going to be going to Texas Tech. That was one that really, up into the end, nobody really had a clear indication until, I think, just before the decision was going to be made. It became clear it was going to be Texas Tech. What do you make of that situation? And then where does that stand for things going for the next commitment for K-State? Because he seemed like he would be the logical choice if they were to get another one soon. Now it's not going to happen. So how long will people have to wait for another cat signal?
Yeah, that does sting, because there was a long stretch where I thought the K-State was going to get Savorian Martin, from the time that he visited April to hearing him talk after his K-State official visit. But apparently, whatever Texas Tech did on his official visit really turned his head and got him to go more towards Texas Tech and playing in Lubbock. What does it mean for the rest of the class? It's not the end of the world. You obviously would have really loved to have a 4-star corner come in, but with how the numbers look right now, this is where somebody have like Garrick Dixon is helpful, because they could, in theory, be done at corner because they already have Garrett Dixon and Brandon Ford. And then that means that now you have 2 corners and 2 safeties with Nick McClellan and Hannibal Navies, and still waiting on Torrey Davis and Mason Lewis. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility, but it does now kind of turn your attention to, okay, now like July 1st, Mason Lewis is somebody that you probably got to get. Or like Torrey Davis, whenever he ends up committing to a school, like that's somebody that you're probably going to have to get now or want to get if you want to get your first, like your top tier corner and safety targets. As far as the next commit goes, I don't know how long we'll have to wait. It is a very, very small official visit list this weekend. But I would imagine that if you're looking for who could be next, I would say probably defensive tackle Jonathan Rouleau. K-State loves him, and he blew them away at a camp that he was at. For a little bit, it seemed like Cincinnati was probably the favorite to land Rouleau. But getting away from the Cincinnati visit and still coming to Manhattan makes me think that K-State's really on top here. And with how much they like Rouleau, it would not surprise me if they really pull out all the stops on this visit. And then kind of need a Jonathan Rouleau because you need more of a true defensive tackle. Because like Kingston Hall is probably going to be a 3-tech. And what I think taking 2 defensive tackles, having one being a little bit more flexible and one being a true defensive tackle really means is like it really does look like there's a potential for a lot more 4 down at K-State right now than the 3 down front, which I think makes total sense because they've been really, really good in the 3 down front. Like that is where the shift really came with them taking a step forward defensively. But they are loaded in the younger classes at defensive end, and the defensive tackle recruiting hasn't exactly been something that will blow you away, but the development of the defensive tackles has been so good that I think that there's a chance. And with how unhealthy the linebacker position has been, just with injuries, like it would make more sense to go to like a 4-2-5.
All right. That's good to know. And we'll obviously be keeping an eye on what goes on this weekend. We talked a little bit on Wednesday about the upcoming weekend of official visitors. Ian Premer, the tight end from Great Bend, being the big ticket item there. So we'll see how that goes, how everything unfolds. But that'll do it for this edition of the KSO Show. It'll close out the week. We will be back again on Monday. And a reminder to go check out yesterday's first edition of KSO Classic, as Drew and I discussed the 2003 K-State Nebraska game. So a little over an hour-long pod for you there to reminisce a little bit and realize just how big of a star Brent Musburger and Gary Danielson were there.
And like looking forward to like next week. Next week is probably going to be a little bit more normal and not like you essentially got 4 recruiting updates this week, plus the KSO Classic. Next week, K-State's not going to get 8 commits in a week stretch.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll hold Drew to that. Make sure it doesn't happen. But we'll get out of here and we'll talk to everybody again on Monday, and then. Yeah, a week from today, we will have another KSO Classic talking 2009 K-State KU football. So we're out of here and talk to you again on Monday.